Everyone, thank you all for being with us. I'd like to call this September 12th, 2023 meeting of the City Council of Charleston to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gregg, Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Stackren, Councilmember Mitchell, Councilmember Brady, Councilmember Gregory, Councilmember Waring, Councilmember Seekings, Councilmember Shade, Councilmember Bowden, Councilmember Appel, Councilmember Parker, Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. Now, if you would like to join us, Councilmember Saccharine will lead us in the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a little day late, but yesterday was September 11th, and I just want us to this evening pause for a moment, then I will read the invocation. But if you had any friends or family members that were involved either in the Twin Towers or the Pentagon or United 93, let's pause for a moment and just remember those lives and remember the time at 9/11 where I really did feel that the country was united. So let's pause for just a moment. Powerful God, our refuge and our strength, we turn to you for peace and security as we recall the 9/11 attack. We thank you for the bravery and the sacrifice of those who saved lives as firefighters, rescue crews, police, and people aboard United 93. Comfort and strengthen the family and friends of those who died. In your name, amen.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business is a presentation. I would like to invite the members of the James Island Girls 10 Under State Champion Softball Team and their coaches to please join me on the podium. Come on up. All the way across. There we go. Wow. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations. So just a little information about this incredible softball team. The tournament was a true group effort, each and every player contributing to the team's success. No matter how big or small the contribution, everyone had a piece in taking this team to victory. But here are a few highlights. Avery Dillon, where are you? She's right here. She threw every pitch of both the district and state tournament with more than 100 strikeouts. That's pretty amazing. Wow. Cam Algeo, where's Cam? Right here. So Cam caught, she was the catcher for every game. It says until her toes became black and blue. She also had the leading bat for the tournament. Excellent player there, Cam. Championship game RBI bunt single to take the lead late by Josie Siegel, scored by Madden McConney. Josie and Madden, y'all raise your hand. All right. Where's Gracie Spencer? Gracie's over there. She had the amazing game-saving catch in the outfield at the end of the game. Where's Carter Gianoli and AK Town? Right here. Yeah. Y'all sure? Raise your hand so we can see it. So their bats were getting hot when it mattered. That's what it says here. Y'all must have been hitting some hits out there. Way to go. And I'm told that the wins followed by pies in the coaches' faces. What kind of pie was it? Yeah. Y'all didn't bring any pies tonight for the mayor, did you? Oh, good. Okay. So battling the heat, exhaustion, long days, this team showed not just talent, but real determination and character that makes our city proud. So I called out a few names, but I'm going to do it again. And y'all raise your hand when I call your name. Cam Algeo, Madden Bacani, Avery Dillon, Carter Gianoli, Kaylee Kersey, Ella Kersey, Madison Paget, Peyton Paget, Reese Paronje, that's Josie Siegel, Anna Kate Town, Gracie Spencer, and Coach AJ Siegel, Coach Lance Dillon, and Coach Nikki Kersey. I think there's a couple others, but I didn't get your names. So you got it. Okay. Let's give them all a big hand of us. Any of the coaches, or do y'all have a designated player who would like to make a comment?
Say thank you to everyone. It was. Here we go. I'm not, look at you. Whenever we won, I went into tears, and I will not do that again up here in front of everybody, but it was a huge sacrifice on everyone's part, team effort, not just the girls who were absolutely amazing, the coaches, Jacob back here with us, letting the girls all over their face. The parents were absolutely amazing, from doing our sweaty laundry, scrubbing our white pants. Again, I'm sorry we chose white pants, but it was great. I love y'all and I thank you. And hopefully we can do it again.
Everybody got a picture that needed to? Good. Okay. Tighten up a little bit. There we go. Awesome. We're good. Thank y'all very much. Come back, we'll tell you a story about that one day. Good job. Well done. Okay. Next up, we have a proclamation recognizing National Drive Electric Week. And would Katie McCain and Chris Carnevale please join me up here? Anybody else that y'all had? Chris, how you doing? Good to see you. Katie. So here's a proclamation for y'all. Whereas petroleum fueled vehicles produce 30% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions and are a contributing factor of air pollution and climate change, threatening the health of our citizens and sustainability of our planet. Whereas the transportation sector is moving to adopt clean energy technology, including plug-in electric vehicles that reduces our dependence on foreign fuels and supports a healthy environment and economy. Whereas the city of Charleston is dedicated to being a leader in the use of clean energy, establishing policies and programs that conserve energy and promote sustainability. And in 2021, City of Charleston adopted its climate action plan to reduce carbon emissions by 56% by 2030 and to net zero by 2050. Whereas an expanded investment in electric vehicles and charging infrastructure is key to achieving city emissions goals while also increasing quality of life for citizens of Charleston. The city continues investing in the expansion of charging infrastructure and city-owned garages and is actively collaborating with the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments to formulate a comprehensive regional charging infrastructure plan. Whereas the city's recent acquisition of its first electric vehicles has yielded highly promising results, and the city is working to create a transition plan for the entire municipal fleet. Whereas the city is actively pursuing federal grant opportunities to capture funding support for both charging infrastructure and fleet vehicles. And in September 22nd to October 1, 2023 has been designated National Drive Electric Week in the United States, which serves to educate citizens about the benefits of plug-in electric vehicles and to promote their continued adoption. Whereas citizens are invited to attend the Drive Electric Charleston event jointly hosted by the City of Charleston and Charleston County on Saturday, September 23rd, to learn more about electric vehicles firsthand from leading industry experts. I think there's even the opportunity to drive one if you haven't had that opportunity. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, on behalf of City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of September 22nd, October 1 this year will be National Drive Electric Week in the City of Charleston. So I'm going to call on Katie and Chris if they'd like to share any further comments about this event that's coming up. Katie?
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to share, as you all know, our first two electric vehicles we purchased in April. We have the planning department and also our mail courier piloting them. All's going really well. We also started tracking fuel savings, real-time savings for these vehicles. And in the first 4 months, we've already saved about $200 just in fuel. And on average, an electric vehicle saves about $1,200 a year in fuel and maintenance. So you can see how these savings really add up. There is also a $7,500 tax credit that both of these vehicles are eligible for. And thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act provisions, we are now, city governments and nonprofits are now allowed to take these tax credits as direct payments in the form of a check, since we have no tax liability. So you can see how these savings really add up over time. And as we start to transition our fleet, we can majorly save on expenses in our fleet. I also wanted to mention our city vehicle will be on display at our September 23rd event. I hope to see you all there. Bring all your EV questions. We'll have all kinds of owners, industry experts, dealers, maintenance folks, charging install people there that you can talk with and get all your questions answered. I did leave a flyer outside and downstairs with a QR code if anyone would like to scan it for more information. And there's one up here with Jennifer too. And with that, I'd like to pass it off to Chris Carnevale. He's our Climate Advocacy Director for the South Alliance of Clean Energy. And Chris has been a strong EV advocate for years and really supportive of the city's projects. So Chris.
Hello, my name is Chris Carnevale. I'm with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. And the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy is supportive of electric vehicles, or EVs, because they keep our communities safer, healthier, and more prosperous. EVs have no tailpipe emissions, so they keep hazardous pollution out of our streets and away from our homes and families, and serve as an important tool in addressing the climate crisis. EVs save drivers serious money. Since fueling EVs with electricity is cheaper than gas, and since EVs require very little maintenance, EV drivers save on average about $1,200 per year. EVs are a major source of local jobs and economic development in our state. South Carolina is now receiving nearly $10 billion in investment for EV manufacturing, and employers have announced more than 10,000 jobs in the EV market in our state. The Inflation Reduction Act, signed into law last year, provides unprecedented tax credits and grants available for local governments, businesses, and households for EVs. And so the time to make the transition has never been better. So on behalf of the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, I want to say thank you to the city and to the mayor for your support for transitioning to electric transportation. And thank you for this proclamation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. So I don't need to tell y'all how committed the state of South Carolina has become to this conversion. And of course, locally, our Volvo production plant will be transitioning to 100% electric vehicle production in just, I think, 2 years' time. BMW in the upstate, they're building a Scout plant near Columbia, which will be all electric vehicles. There's a huge investment being made in Berkeley County to create batteries. So y'all, South Carolina can really be at the forefront of this conversion to electric vehicles and alternative fuels. So give it a give it a trial run and come out to the event on the 23rd if you want to see some of the products that are now already available. Now, next, I'd like to ask if there's any junior league members who are here, please come forward. We have one more proclamation. Is this Bethany? Bethany. Is it Adamson? Adamson. Thank you for being with us, y'all. We got a little dirty business to cover here tonight because it is National Diaper Need Awareness Week. And it's probably in the proclamation, but I recently attended the 100th anniversary of the Junior League of Charleston. And that's a whole nother story about their incredible commitment to this community. You wouldn't believe all the nonprofits over the last 100 years that the Junior League of Charleston really started. They've been just amazing, but their most recent project has been this National Diaper Need Awareness Week. And as chance would have it, Sandy and I, my wife and I, we live 2 doors down from the diaper bank. So we don't need diapers anymore in my family, but anyway, we're close to the diaper bank, just in case. Okay, the proclamation. Whereas diaper need, the condition of not being able to afford a sufficient supply of clean diapers to keep babies and toddlers clean, dry, and healthy, can adversely affect the health and well-being of both children and their families. Y'all know how expensive diapers are these days? They're very expensive. Whereas national surveys and studies report that nearly half of all families struggle with diaper need and delay changing a diaper to extend available supply. Whereas a daily or weekly supply of diapers is typically considered as an eligibility requirement for babies and toddlers to participate in quality childcare and early education programs that enable children to thrive and parents to work. And whereas many parents struggling with diaper need report missing an average of 5 days of work each month due to an insufficient supply of diapers, thus threatening to destabilize family income. Whereas without enough diapers, babies and toddlers risk infections and health problems that may require professional care, resulting in medical costs. Whereas the people of Charleston recognize that diaper need is an important public health issue and that addressing diaper need can improve impacted families' economic well-being and children's health, thus allowing them to reach their full potential. Whereas the city of Charleston is proud to be home to trusted community-based organizations like the Junior League of Charleston Diaper Bank that recognize the importance of this issue and work hard to distribute diapers to families in need. And whereas the city of Charleston thanks the Junior League of Charleston Diaper Bank staff, volunteers, donors for their ongoing service, and encourage the citizens of Charleston donate to diaper banks and drives so that local children and family can thrive and reach their full potential. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, on behalf of City Council, we proclaim the week of September 18th through the 24th as National Diaper Need Awareness Week in the city of Charleston. So please y'all join me in a round of applause for the Junior League of Charleston. And Bethany is probably going to share it, but I do remember one other fact from their 100th year anniversary. To date, since they started this program, they have given out over 800,000 diapers. And the track they're going on, by next year, they'll be at 1 million diapers that they've given out in the city of Charleston. It's amazing. Would you like to make some remark? Yeah.
We're really looking forward to Diaper Need Awareness Week. Throughout the week, we're going to be hosting diaper drives around the community, gathering donations, as well as continuing to spread awareness of diaper need. If you're interested, look at our website, jlcharleston.org/diaperbank. It has a list of drop-off locations and events, or you can drop off diapers right at our office on Folly Road, right over across from Windermere and Earth Bear and all of that. But like Mayor Tecklenburg said, now more than ever is the time to be addressing diaper need. We're looking forward to that's a good and bad thing. Looking forward to that 1 million diaper mark of distributing within the next year. But we are seeing that need across our community with the increase in requests. We've increased community partner organizations that we work with. We're now working with 15 across the community. And we are just, using all of our volunteer effort to work on this important issue. So we appreciate the city of Charleston and everyone's support in helping us with this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to get a picture together? Let's hold the proclamation. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. All right, thank you. So next on is our public hearings. And actually, all of these public hearings we had at our last meeting, they had been advertised, but we changed our location. So we're doing a redo just in case we missed anybody. And we're going to hear from anybody who would like to speak on these matters. Now, there's 12 of them before us tonight. And since we did have them presented at our last meeting, I was just going to call out the addresses of all these properties, and then anybody who wants to speak on any of these matters is welcome to come forward and speak. So, Mr. Bryant, just give me a minute and I'll call out all the properties that are involved, and then we'll call on you and anybody else who would like to be heard. So the first matter is regarding a rezoning of 99 St. Philip Street, but it also includes 106 and 110 Cumming Street. Altogether, they're creating a planned unit development. Number two is 912 Savannah Highway, which is getting a zoning of limited business. Now, the rest of these 3 through 11 are all single-family residences that are getting zoning of single SR1, which is a single-family zoning. So I'm just going to call out the addresses on these. 2245 South Dallerton Circle, 2223 North Dallerton Circle, 2138 Wapu Drive, 1817 Wilshire Drive, 1865 Stonehenge Road, 1725 Mulmar Street, 2205 Wapu Drive, 743 Swan Avenue, 1628 Boone Hall Drive, and then lastly, a business zoning of 3124 Maybank Highway to be classified as our business park classification. Mr. Morgan, did I miss any of those? Or you want to add any comments to any of them?
Mayor, just on the last one, it's a combination. A portion of the tract is going to be general business on Maybank, and then the rear portion is going to be business park.
I see. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Would anyone like to be heard on any of these matters? Please come forward, state your name and address, and we'll ask you to try to keep your remarks to 2 minutes. Mr. Bryant.
Anthony G. Bryant, President Bryant Group, Inc. I really wanted to, came to correct some things of the record. First of all, I don't live in Orangeburg. I don't live in Rock Hill. I don't live in Aiken. I don't live in any county there. But Senior Judge Brian Hallwell reassigned my name and my case to U.S. Magistrate Shiva Hodges. Okay, so therefore, I'm just in Charleston. Now, the only way a reassignment can take place, I objected as a pro se litigant in the public interest in terms of land use policies throughout the country. So I'm very happy that Mr. Hallwell picked me, a person that's got disparities, but very capable as far as public policy in terms of disparities, justice system. Let's get to this right here for a minute. As far as public safety is concerned, in terms of the College of Charleston, I don't know anything about the Public Safety College of Charleston based on what we're talking about here. I don't know what's going on at all in any college or universities based upon Senator Marlon Kimpson, which was his district, which was MUSC, which was the College of Charleston, which was the Citadel, wherever. I don't know what he's talking about. But at the end of the day, I have to be on the record. I'm in Charleston. I'm not in Columbia. I'm not there. I'm not in Aiken. I'm not in Rock Hill, and I'm not in Orangeburg.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard on any of these matters? Mr. McAllister, did you want to be heard? And I don't know if he wants to say a word or not, but I want to recognize that we have the president of the College of Charleston in the house with us this evening. President and Dr. Andrew Shu, thank you so much for being with us, Mr. President. Anthony,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'll be
please
brief.
to the microphone.
I'll be brief. I just want to thank you for your extremely valuable time. And we worked hard on this project for almost 9 years. Get students out of the neighborhoods, back on campus. College would like to potentially build some classrooms as well. Christopher did a good job of laying it out with Planning Commission and at our last meeting. So if you have any questions, I'm here. And thank you for your support.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to be heard on any of those properties, zonings that I called out, any of those properties? Hearing none, it comes to council approval. 1 to 12.
Be approved.
Second, so we do need to exclude number 12 until we have the annexation approved during second readings. So
1 through 11.
what we really have up right
Second.
now is numbers 1 through 11 for second reading. We got a motion to that effect and a second. Any discussion at all? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now the third reading and ratification of 1 through 11. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We'll come back to number 12 after second reading. So you're all approved. Next up is our approval of city council minutes from July 18th. Any additions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is our citizens participation period. And how many folks do we have signed up?
We have 10 people signed up to speak.
10 people, let's say a couple of minutes, 2 minutes each. And
All right.
we welcome you all. Madam Clerk will call out your names and ask you, though, when you come up, please state your name and your address. And we look forward to hearing from you.
All right. The time is 2 minutes. Anthony Bryant.
The question becomes when one group of people got the most money in the budget, they've got the most people in the budget, and they got qualified immunity from a local level, county level, state level, federal level. What happens to you when that happens? Excessive use of force. And what I did was when I went inside of the courtroom to pick up one document, it was brought to their attention by local police that I may have been aggressive in my behavior, reckless in my behavior, which I wasn't. I came to get one document. When I walked out there that day, it could have been a warrant of some sort against me getting my own document from 85 Broad Street. And I said it to Brian Hallwell, letting Brian Hallwell know the deal, that Black people won't be treated that way. I don't know 50,000 students in Charleston. I don't know 5,000 employees at the school district. I know none of them. But based upon the zoning that I've got, if I went on a school campus 10 years ago, force could have been used against me. That is a bad idea for a lot of people. I don't play that. I ain't that kind of Black man you handle like that. Okay, I don't want to be your friend and buddy. I don't want to pray with you because separates the church and state. In this city, the church sanctioned slavery. Don't play with me. Don't play with me with that religious thing with Black people in this town. You sanctioned slavery. 1830, you had more people look like somebody here and they owned slaves. Everybody owned slaves. Don't play with me with that. Don't throw me in the middle of a religious discussion in Charleston. Don't do that to me. I'm not having it. That's a lie. You owned us like animals and you enjoyed it for 2 years. Thank you very much.
Katie Zimmerman.
Hi, thank you. Katie Zimmerman, Executive Director of Charleston Moves, 478 King Street. I just first wanted to thank you all for considering the resolution tonight for the Ashley River Bridge to continue working on that. I was going back through and doing some math, looking through the 2019 federal grant application. And if you compare the new cost of the bridge with the benefits, the benefits are still at least 7 times as much as the cost. So it's just really a tremendous project that's going to benefit everybody, whether they use it or not. Also, I just wanted to reiterate, since y'all might be getting an update on the downtown safety improvements project tonight, just wanted to reiterate Charleston Moves' support of the buffered bike lane design that also includes a road diet, pedestrian crossings, and also reiterate that if we get to the point where the bike lane is truly untenable, again, I just want to offer up, I think it's absolutely worth having a discussion about what a safe compromise could look like so that everybody on King Street and everybody beyond benefits from that. So just wanted to say those 2 things and thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Lowry Hughes.
Good evening. My name is Lowry Hughes. I live at 119 Cumming Street, downtown, and I've lived there for a little over 10 years. I'm here tonight to ask the council to include funds to convert Cumming Street to 2-way traffic and include them in the 2024 budget. Cumming Street runs from Logan on the south side, crosses Septima P. Clark, and ends at Ray Street on north. It bisects a uniformly residential neighborhood and the College of Charleston campus. There are less than a dozen small independent businesses along its 1.4-mile length. The city council voted to convert the street back to its original 2-way configuration in 2012. 5 years later, in 2017, the council was waiting to determine if the Spring Cannon Street conversion was successful before moving forward with Cumming Street. I began meeting with Mayor Tecklenburg that year, 2017, and I've met with him many times in the intervening 6 years, all with a single purpose of slowing traffic that transits through a residential neighborhood and college campus crowded with large numbers of pedestrians, bicycles, scooters, skateboards, and cars. Timing the traffic lights to 25 miles an hour, replacing those lights with stop signs, or simply enforcing the posted speed limit would work, but the best solution is 2-way traffic, as evidenced by the success of Spring and Cannon. The Traffic and Transportation Department is on record as having requested funds for the conversion every year since 2013, but the city council has refused the requests. They are again trying to have it included in the 2024 budget. I have tried to contact city council members Gregory, Mitchell, and Seekings, who each represent portions of Cumming Street, to ask their support with this project. Regrettably, all 3 have failed to respond despite repeated attempts. So I'm here tonight to put the issue before the entire council. Our neighborhoods would like to know why you are failing to act on this measure that was passed 11 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor.
I want to commend Mr. Hughes, y'all, because in the 8 years that I've been having Mayor's Night In events here at City Hall, he is the most faithful attendee of any citizen in the city of Charleston. He has attended Mayor's Night In more than any other citizen. And I would respectfully say that given the approval we just gave tonight for this full development of the former YWCA property, which is of course in that first block of Cumming Street, north of Calhoun, it's time for us to reckon with and decide whether we really want to do this or not. And I appreciate you bringing it forward to council tonight. Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Muhammad Idris.
Evening, Mayor, City Council. It's wonderful to hear the mayor giving this congratulations to the gentleman, saying he's the most attendee to the Mayor's Night in the city of Charleston. I don't know no citizen in Charleston have attended city council meeting more than me in the last 30 years, no one.
That's absolutely correct.
And I have supported John and the former mayor, and have been kicked to the side. So I'm deciding I'm going to work with the man who's running against John this time. And we're going to have the clear evidence to show that the poor have been kicked to the curb. I'm asked Carswell, candidate Carswell, to work with me to get $21 million to get some properties that we see on the peninsula to secure a place on the peninsula for the poor of this city as long as this city is in existence. And he agreed to work with me, and I will be working with him. And you will be hearing two numbers until this election is over with and maybe after. And that's going to be 13 and 21. 13 represent the government. If you look at the word bond, B-O-R-N, and you add it up, it's gonna come to 49. 9 and 4 is 13. If you look at age, A-J-E, that is 13. You got the 13 stripes in the flag. And Joseph, the prophet, peace and blessing of God be upon him, had a dream of
Time.
11 stars, the sun and the moon. That's 13. So you're gonna hear these numbers until this election is over with and we get rid of John out of that seat. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rowan Emerson.
Good evening, council. My name is Ron Emerson, 47 Ash Street. I'm program manager for Charleston Climate Coalition. Probably no surprise to some of you, but I'm here to speak on the King Street bike lane. I'd like to thank Councilman Gregory for requesting the update on the bike lane. I think obviously the more open this process is, the faster we can come to a consensus. I would like to specifically speak on the narrative that has been crafted about the bike lane thus far, especially from a business perspective. We've been told that we need to hear more from stakeholders. That was a big word that came up last council meeting. And that the thousands of citizens that have spoken out in support of the bike lane through emails, online letters, and in person are not enough to convince council for the need for this bike lane. The narrative put forth so far weaves a tale that King Street businesses do not support the bike lane. But as I and my constituents have seen in the last few weeks, as we've been canvassing on King Street, is that a lot of these businesses, in fact, a vast majority of them support the bike lane and see the same issues that have been pointed out week after week by citizens about the 14-foot alternative. As of right now, we have over 20 business owners that have signed a letter of support for this bike lane. And really, along with these letters, I wish I had pictures of their faces when I, tell them the fact that King Street is the third most dangerous street in the entire state for pedestrians and bicyclists. Usually this is followed by some kind of exclamation, then followed by a, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then followed by an anecdote about a loved one or, family member that has been hit on King Street. Whether or not a buffer bike lane will be installed on King Street, bicyclists will continue to use it. And if there is no bike lane, then King Street will continue to be one of the most deadly streets in the state. As Councilman Seekings has stated at previous traffic and transportation meetings, every single time, safety always wins on a thoughtful basis. And a buffered bike lane is a thoughtful and it includes a wide array of stakeholders that use King Street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jody McKnight.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I was here on August the 15th, and I'm the catastrophic injury lawyer that spoke very briefly, and I followed up with a letter to you all on the 18th regarding standards of care. In my world, in the legal world, we deal in standards of care, safety standards of care. That's why the rise and the run on stairways is supposed to be the same. That's why we have these railings. The South Carolina DOT has given us, all of us non-experts, we're not roadway engineers, we're not human factors experts like they are. They have come up with this comprehensive plan that puts a buffered bike lane on King Street. And that was done with using professional standards, not just conjecture and, oh, this would be nice. To remove it would be like a surgeon saying, okay, I'm going to operate on this arm and I'm going to use the proper standard of care using my professional standards, and then call his neighbor and say, how do you think I ought to operate on this arm? You don't mix up cultural aesthetic issues with safety issues. We need consistent ways of thinking about, and the only this bike lane, the only way to think about it is the professional standard of care that's been set. Ford Motor Company, suppose they just reduce their safety standard of care on cars, preferring profit over safety. They get burned every time on punitive damages when they do that. Okay, here we don't even have a profit issue. The complaints of the merchant stakeholders is basically, we don't like it. Maybe it'll impede traffic. We just don't want it. No real option that says, oh, our thing is safety. It's a safety issue. So we should not mix safety standards of care with cultural aesthetic issues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Greg Gowder.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Greg Gowder. I am the Executive Director of the Carolina Ocean Alliance and Festival Director of the Hope Summit. The Hope Summit is an annual conference and festival that we host here in Charleston every September at the end of the month. And it's here to highlight our community's challenges and to celebrate the community-driven solutions that are exemplified by dozens of local nonprofits, community groups, schools, and government agencies, some of whom are present tonight. This year, the Hope Summit will be held from September 29th to October 1st with a conference at the College of Charleston on September 30th and the festival on October 1st at Daniel Allen Waterfront Park. I'm here tonight specifically to thank the city staff who have worked so hard to help make this event possible, and also to thank the mayor for agreeing to come and be part of our opening welcome at the conference. I'd like to specifically thank Katie Gianni and Jamie Gillette for their assistance, along with Daniel Allen Neighborhood Association President Andrea Sullivan for co-sponsoring the festival out on Daniel Island. I'd like to personally invite each and every one of you to join us at this event, especially at the festival. It's a great opportunity to meet the over 40 local nonprofits and sustainable vendors who will be in attendance. And I'd like to invite all residents of the Tri-County area to be part of this free and family-friendly event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Edward Jones.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Edward Jones. I live at 61 America Street. Also a member of the Eastside Community Development Corporation on the executive board. Also founder of a group in the city of Charleston called the Concerned Citizen of the Peninsula/Low Country, required CCPLC. And the reason why I say councilman and mayor, because I'm turning to the councilman. 64 years old, all my life in Charleston. The worst I ever had. But I just want to say this ready. I will not be bullied. I will not be silent. I will not be bought, and I will not be controlled. I'm saying this to councilman. I do not like bullying. Councilman, you know how I go about that. I do not like bullying. I do not like to be pushed around. So I'm asking this council, I'm requesting a one-on-one sit down with Mayor Tecklenburg from today until next week, Tuesday. If not, then we go on, because I worked from 72 until the present. I volunteered my time with the city of Charleston Park and Recreation. Volunteer. Playing state championship. Mentor millions and millions of kids around the city. Councilman, every day I get walk around and say somebody come back with their family and thank me for what I done for them in their life. I refuse to have anyone dictate to me. I try to do things to mess with my character. I make it a personal issue, nothing personal. And it will not happen. I refuse to let it happen. I'm a father of 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl, got 5 grandkids. All right. And I refuse to have this city, the leadership of the city, think they're going to do what they wanted to do. I requesting a meeting, one-on-one sit down with Mayor Tecklenburg between this week up until next week, Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Zach Bisiti.
Zach Vasidi, 59 Cypress. Just must be kismet that we are recognizing green transportation on the day that we progress the bike lane. Just like to clap that out. I would also like to recognize Councilman Parker for taking additional time to seek out feedback from additional stakeholders. However, speaking as somebody who has dealt with a dream deferred, I think it's also wise to engage in some experimentation so we know what a bike lane, what a more pedestrianized infrastructure would do on King Street. And so I'm suggesting that this council look at pedestrianizing or limiting car traffic on South Market Street. As a thoroughfare, it is practically non-existent. It's very slow moving. Leave it open to horse carriage traffic, leave it open to bicyclists, leave it open to pedestrians, but see what happens. Do people take over the street? Do people and businesses actually engage in more commerce? Is it good for Charleston? Before we engage and really change King Street, which is one of the pinnacles of our city, everybody would agree, we ought to look and do real experimentation as well as speak to stakeholders. So look at pedestrianizing South Market Street, even if it's just a small section, it is, pretty much redundant. We have North Market Street, so vendors can park there, people can get around it on State Street. There are plenty of opportunities to look at this and gather more evidence before we abandon a perfectly great bike plan or take unalterable action on King Street and go proceed without kind of a full plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And those were all the speakers that we had. We did receive some comments online. 13 comments received were in favor of a protected bike lane on King Street, including a joint submission by a group of King Street businesses and property owners. 3 comments were in favor of the Ashley River Crossing pedestrian bridge, including a comment submitted by the Coastal Conservation League. 7 comments received online were in favor of both a protected bike lane on King Street and a bicycle bridge across the Ashley River, including a submission by the East Coast Greenway Alliance. 1 comment received stressed the current unsafe situation for bicyclists biking between West Ashley and downtown. 1 comment objected to spending money on a separate pedestrian bridge and said that the logical thing to do was to modify the sidewalk of the present bridge. 1 comment received online said that the city appeared to have relabeled an agenda item concerning the status of the assessment of the implementation of the racial bias audit of the CPD to CPD internal review, and said it was important that the full status of the work on the assessment, which was now 2 months beyond the original June deadline, be made public in the interest of transparency for all. And then we also received one letter from the Charleston Climate Coalition, which supported the King Street bike lane and stressed the environmental benefits of bike lanes. And those are all the comments we received.
Thank you. And did we miss anybody? Anybody want to make a comment that didn't get a chance to? Well, thank you all for your comments this evening. We really appreciate your participation. So next up is our petitions and communications. We have just appointments to the Children's Museum of the Low Country. They've allowed 2 council members. We have a appointment of council members Stephen Bowden and Caroline Parker to join the Children's Museum of the Low Country. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. All right, you're approved. So next up, we're going to have a presentation by Stephen O'Connell he's a project manager with Black and Veatch. They've been a partner with the city on numerous projects, including work with the Spring Fishburne Tunnel project, but now importantly with the Comprehensive Integrated Water Plan. Stephen?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Dale, for having me here to present and give you an update on the water plan. I'll bring the presentation up. So we were here late last year to give an introduction to the work, introduce the team, and this is about a year into the program, kind of give an update on where we stand today and give you a path moving forward. Thank you. So as a reminder, this is a Charleston integrated water plan. This is for the entirety of Charleston. We broke it into different planning areas. So we have Inner West Ashley, Outer West Ashley. We have James Island, Johns Island, the Peninsula, Daniel Island, and Cainhoy. Our team is Black and Veatch, and we are teamed with national experts, Wagner and Ball, who's very well known from the Dutch Dialogues work, the land and water analysis, Moffitt Nickel, coastal engineering experts, and locally biohabitats, nature-based solutions. So we got a national-based team, but also anchored here locally through Black and Veatch. Seem to be advancing. Oh, there we go. Oh. Okay, so briefly, I'll go over the water plan approach. What is the approach to the water plan? What's the meaning of the water plan? And then go into preliminary analysis and findings, and then a roadmap forward. So the water plan is meant to be a proactive, aspirational, achievable vision for the city. The idea is to take numerous plans that have been developed. You have Plan West Ashley, we have the resiliency plan for Johns Island. We have the comprehensive plan for the city that had a land and water analysis. To take all those plans, take the best out of those, and create some implementable projects and vision for the city to grow. It's looking at integration of those existing stormwater projects that are currently ongoing in the different planning areas. And it's a 25-year planning horizon. I think that's the biggest key here. When we started to evaluate the different areas, different zones in the city need support at different times in that 25-year horizon. And some don't even require it in 25-year horizon. So it's looking at tipping points. When does marsh migration start to occur in different areas? When does the floodplain start to creep up? Right now you have the 500-year floodplain and the 100-year floodplain, but that's moving up with sea level rise. So as that increases, you have less high ground to develop on and grow with. We are planning to deliver a draft plan at the end of this year, early in 24, gather comments from the city, and then develop a final plan first quarter of 24 as well. And it'll be a story map version. So the intent is to make it a document that's modifiable and adaptable and not a static document that sits on the shelf. So our water plan team is building from the work that was done in the land and water analysis, which is part of the comprehensive plan. And it's based on elevation-based zoning policy. So you can kind of get a general feel for Charleston, where the high areas are, and this is today, and where the low areas are. And through the land and water analysis, we developed a plan for different tools for the city. So defend areas, reserve certain areas, adapt areas, or grow areas. And in general, what you're seeing there is from the blue areas, that's low. That's marsh or areas that are at risk for flooding. And then you see the adapt zone, and that's the orange and lighter blue. That's where we need to make modifications to existing plans. That could include raising homes, include nature-based solutions to dampen the effect of flooding. And then we have the green areas, which is the grow. That's the high ground, the natural high ground in Charleston. This graphic is showing as sea level rise, and we're projecting 14 to 18 inches in 25 years. As sea level rise occurs, those zones are changing. You're losing more of your high ground. Your adaptation zone is getting larger and your zone of flooding is getting bigger. So how are we going to manage that? We have met with all of the departments in the city numerous times and have a discussion specifically related to looking at 25 years in the future, and then beyond that, where does the city need to invest their money? Where is it best used for resources? Part of this was an engagement. So our team has done in the last year, we have, and this is a tough slide to read, but it's really trying to show how many times we've been engaging with the community. We had in March 6th through the 10th, we had specific workshops. We met with Rosemont and had a specific day in Rosemont discussing their future resiliency plan, which is coming up. We met with the Peninsula stakeholders and community members. And then in April, we came back and met with all the rest of the communities, including James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley, and Daniel Island and Cainhoy. The outcome of those meetings was very good support in general. We gathered a lot of feedback, understood where we had areas that we didn't know flooding occurred. So we marked those down, but we also didn't reach everybody. So we had another set of workshops, 3 specific days focused on the equity in EJ communities that we did not capture in the first 2 rounds. And we had specific meetings on Johns Island, downtown in the peninsula, and James Island to capture additional feedback from the community. And through our partners, Community Solutions Consulting, with Adrian Swinton, we helped develop a better program to capture a greater outreach. So building on the land and water analysis and building on that zoning framework, our team's looking at key water levels in all of the planning areas and trying to define those tipping points for those key water levels. And I'm going to go through each of the planning areas, but this here is showing Inner West Ashley. And what we're trying to depict in the blue is both an amalgamation of today's flooding concerns plus the future flooding concerns. So what we're showing is the standard annual highest high tide level, and then we're adding on sea level rise, both at 1.5 feet and 2.5 feet. And we're also overlaying this. This is a SACS data is what we're using for the floodplain. So this is the most recent up-to-date information we have as a team. It's more accurate than some of the FEMA information, so it includes the compound flooding impacts. So we're using the most recent data we can as a team to map each of the planning areas. It's not a modeling exercise, so there are areas that we aren't including tide flex valves that have been installed. But this is a mapping exercise using digital elevation models to show where problematic areas will be in the future. So what you're seeing in Inner West Ashley, you got burns down as a concern in the lower portion of West Ashley on the Stono. And then you've got areas, Marysville, Ashleyville. So we're looking at projects in those areas and we'll be working to develop those concepts, which I'll show momentarily. Moving into Outer West Ashley, what you're seeing here is maybe a little more high ground. Inner West Ashley is pretty built out. So different problems from Outer West Ashley where there's new development and future development is going to occur. So we've got a plan for that. How does that development impact water management into the future? You can kind of see here, but there's a natural connection that's currently blocked between Church Creek and Long Branch, kind of running from the Stono up to the Ashley. In 25 years, that connection is going to look more impactful. So how do we deal with that corridor? That's one of the major areas we're going to be evaluating. What does that look like? Is that reserving area for green space? How do we deal with the homes that are impacted in that flood zone? And so I know Matt and his group have projects already throughout this area on the stormwater side, but they're looking at today's issues. So we're trying to identify 25 years from now, what changes? Where does the investment need to go 25 years from now? So we don't have continuation of problems. James Island is probably the hardest that we've had to evaluate. And we've had many meetings on James Island, and actually our latest round there where we met with specific communities, pointed out new areas that we were unaware of. Ferguson Village is an area that we heard about from the community. We've now got a project concept we're thinking of in that location. But James Island is difficult because you're dealing with multiple municipalities. So the water plan team is trying to develop a strategy to continue the good work and collaborations going on between the city, the town, James Island PSD, and the county. But there's an issue that needs to be resolved if you're actually going to solve James Island. It's such a low-lying area. Johns Island as well is probably future consideration. It's some of the higher ground in the city. And right now it's about development and developing smart. And what are those developments? How are they going to impact water management? The Stormwater Department has already implemented some of the Dutch dialogues, suggestions at Barberry Woods. That's a program that's using nature-based solutions and gray infrastructure. So there's already some good things going on here, and and the resiliency plan for Johns Island outlines a lot of those strategies. But what you're looking at here is this might be further down the road. So when we're talking about concepts and projects, we're talking temporally. When in time do we need to invest money? And this is showing Daniel Island and Cainhoy. So Cainhoy, it's all white pretty much there, other than a little portion in the south of Cainhoy. And that indicates it's the highest ground in Charleston. So for the most part, from even some of the bigger storm surge, you're going to be safe. But when do the tipping points occur? Daniel Island is a planned community whose stormwater system is working. It's functioning properly now. But when you overlay 1.5 feet of sea level rise or 2 feet of sea level rise, does that change how their stormwater system operates? So those tipping points we're looking at. We expect Daniel Island and Cainhoy to be future considerations. But on Cainhoy, it's about development and not making bad choices now that will impact flooding in the future. The peninsula is vulnerable. So when we talk about the different strategies, adaptation, reservation, reserve, defend and grow, it's about dollars in the end. And I'll show some prioritization, but the peninsula is ultimately a defend type category. But what we're showing here is known areas. We know where it floods in the peninsula for the most part, but you're also seeing the water moving further and further inland with sea level rise and those increased major tidal events. Yep.
I'm looking at your legend and you have the dark blue, the average annual highest tide at 5.1. Is that across the board? Is that the average annual high tide?
That's the average, but the datum's NAVD 88.
Right, I got you.
Yeah, correct. That's the average annual high tide.
So is someone mapping that to see if that number continues to rise over the course of time? Because I'm assuming it will, right? I mean, the average
absolutely.
annual high tide should be going up if all the predictions are correct.
It is, yeah. And so that's, I think Dale showed in the last meeting, the graph with the different tide levels.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. The trajectory is skyrocketing. And so what we're predicting, and I have a slide later, is that the annual highest tide plus sea level, 1 foot of sea level rise is about 9.5 feet mean lower level water, which is just what we saw in Adelia. That was 9.23. So that becomes every month, at least you'll see that tide. And I got a future image that kind of shows that in more detail. Yes. This is an interesting map. I don't have all the maps for all of the areas shown here, and I'm happy to provide those, but this is overlaying the environmental justice communities via the EPA standard with flood risk prone areas. So what you're seeing is the darker the red, that's the more those two coincide and interact. So when we're developing our concept plans for projects, this is one of the key metrics we're looking at. Is the project going to impact those that are least served? And the EPA standards looking at socioeconomic. So it's looking at income levels, it's looking at minority, and it's looking at environmental concerns. So overlaying this EJ with the flooding has been pretty eye-opening from the standpoint of where those two coincide. And you'll typically find that a lot of the flooding occurs in the lower income neighborhoods. The image on the right is taken from the land and water analysis, but this is the strategy our team is building upon. So you got areas of reservation. Where is marsh migration going to occur? Or where is marsh die-off going to occur? Should we be reserving low-lying areas to let the marsh migrate? The marsh helps dampen a lot of the impacts of flooding. Then you have the adapt area. So as sea level rise increases, the adapt zone gets bigger and bigger. How do we adapt those zones? Is it via nature-based solutions? Is it via structural solutions with raising homes? And this even could include buyouts, which the city has done previously. Then you have defend and you have grow. So we've got those all mapped for each of the different planning areas. The priorities are listed on the left. First and foremost, is flood mitigation and adaptation. That's the #1 priority. These are to help identify projects. So we have a list of 200 projects that need to be completed that come out of the water plan. Obviously, financially, you can't afford all of those, but we need to show which ones are most ripe for financing. Second is equity and accessibility. The third is natural systems. Can we use nature-based solutions in areas instead of gray infrastructure? We're talking about coordination and communication. That's continuing with education for the community, and then ultimately implementation and investment. We don't want to recommend projects that cannot be implementable or cannot be built and can't be proved to actually be effective and down the road. This is just an example using Inner West Ashley and James Island. I won't go into the details on these projects. What you're seeing in the circles is areas we have identified for future project concepts. Those concept projects will be developed to a certain stage, a certain number through the water plan. Others will be provided in appendices, a list of projects that need to be vetted further out in the future. But each of the planning areas, through our communication with the community and stakeholders, we've identified specific areas that target projects that help with compound flood relief. And that's what we're showing or indicating in these images. And these two are specifically shown because James Island and West Ashley are the two most critical sea islands right now for investment. Daniel Island, Cane Hoy, and Johns Island are a little bit further down the road. So Councilmember Seeking, as this addresses somewhat what you were talking about, but what we're showing here is this is a major tidal flooding event. And the dark blue, that's showing a normal major tide. So 8 foot mean level of the water with 1.5 feet of sea level rise. That's the dark blue. The light blue is a surge. So a 50-year surge event at 9.5 feet plus 1.5 foot of sea level rise. So at that event, what you're seeing is a little swath of land in the middle that's protected. And that's anything above 12 feet.
Does
So-
does that model include any rainfall at the same time, or is that just tidal with surge?
SACs includes some compound flooding, but it's tough to predict the ponding. So it's just, there's no modeling in this. It's really mapping based on digital elevation
Is
models.
there a way to model it so you put a couple of inches every 2 or 3
Yeah.
hours on top of it?
Yeah, there's ways to model a storm event. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. So this map, which you can't see well, is that the existing stormwater tunnels are shown. Spring Fishburne is up in the upper hand left side, and Market Street, Calhoun tunnel system is on the right hand side. So our team's looking at that integration. For us in the peninsula, that's really important. How do you integrate the existing stormwater systems and the investment there? You've got the brick arches, Matt's group and stormwater department is cleaning those out currently. But how do you integrate the brick arches? How do you integrate the tunnel systems into a system that serves both tidal flooding, rainfall flooding, and surge? And to ensure the viability of the downtown peninsula for the community, the businesses, the residents, the water plan team recommends a perimeter. And that perimeter needs to be integrated. And it needs to serve tidal conditions, it needs to serve rainfall conditions, and it needs to serve surge conditions. This is the same event as the previous slide with the perimeter protection in place. So it's critical to understand, though, that the investment that's already been made on the stormwater side has to be included. And then future projects as well. King and Hugie isn't shown, Calhoun West isn't shown. We've got Cooper Jackson that's in the area. The other thing on this slide is Union Pier Terminal. So in Ways and Means, there was an approval for our team to do an analysis of Union Pier Terminal from the reset and the relook at the zoning. So our team is going to be evaluating water management across Union Pier Terminal and trying to dovetail with the Riley Center's work. That's a really critical piece to understanding the future of the peninsula from an interior hydrology, interior hydrology standpoint. Sure.
That orange looking line that is encircling the peninsula, what does that represent?
That represents a 12-foot elevation perimeter around the peninsula.
And that is running, I'm trying to get my bearings because it's far away, all the way from Wagner Terrace to the northwest section of the peninsula, and to the right, it's I can't make out that line coming to the east side and all the way down to the museum, the Union Pier, Waterfront Park, and you're showing that wall interior of the peninsula. Am I reading that correctly?
This is it's overlain with the Army Corps perimeter wall alignment. That's what this is currently showing. Did I answer your question there, Councilman?
Yes. I mean, you're overlaying what the Army Corps has.
Correct, and it's just a zone. That's not this is, yeah, for purposes of this, it's simply a zone. And our recommendation is for perimeter protection, whether that's via nature-based solutions in areas or gray infrastructure in areas. But it's in essence to have an edge that protects.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so this is a major tidal event plus 1.5 feet of sea level rise. So projecting out 25 years, and a 50-year surge event with 1.5 feet of sea level rise on top of that. So the 50-year surge event would be a 9.5 foot. Today's value would be 9.5 feet, which is lower than Hugo. But in the future, we're putting 1.5 feet of sea level rise on top of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Is the peninsula lower than James Island?
No,
Okay.
no, James Island is, and that's a, let me go back real quick. So here's peninsula. Generally, the white indicates high ground. James Island is very low.
Thank you.
No, that was my last slide. Yes, no. Thank you.
If I may, I have thank you. I have several, thank you. That's a wonderful presentation. I
Thank you.
appreciate how you gave it to us. So a couple of thoughts I heard that I made some notes on. First of all, I heard this number 200 projects.
That is a number thrown out there. We don't have 200 necessarily identified.
Well, that's why I want you to clarify that for
Yep.
us. So the 200 projects you talk about, the 200 projects that are that are planned or should be planned or in the works. I mean, can you just clarify that for us?
Yeah, thank you. 200 projects was to indicate how much issues we have with flooding in Charleston. We don't have a list of 200. It's probably closer to 50 or 60 projects. And our water plan team is going to take 6 projects that are identified to a level roughly of 10% design. So 6 projects in the different planning areas. And then there'll be a host of other projects that need to be evaluated further in the future.
So we're going to tier this, for lack of a better way of categorizing. 200 projects anticipated, tier that down to between 50 and 60, and tier that down to between 5 and 6. If I heard you correctly.
No, so 5 or 6 will be projects that we're going to take the concept level.
Okay.
To try proof of concept. And then there'll be a whole host of projects below that that are still as viable or as required.
All right, so
We don't have that full list yet.
So the 5 or 6 would be where? What parts of the city?
We haven't identified the total 5 or 6, but the general intent is to couple things. One is to do proof of concept for something like defend, for adapt, for grow, and for reserve. So those are the 4 strategies. Ideally, we would be able to address each of those 4 strategies. And then you're going to see certainly projects in James Island and West Ashley. That's the right areas right now. We're also teaming with the Army Corps on the 3x3 inland tidal study. So the projects that we're trying to identify, hopefully those concept projects are projects that the Army Corps could evaluate further in the 3x3 and ultimately help fund.
Right, so you identify some of the projects such as Calhoun West, that would fit into this 5 or 6 category. You're talking about that.
It would not be part of the 5 or 6.
All right. The other comment you made, and I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing you, but just bear with me for a few seconds. When you talked about Daniel Island and Johns Island, today, they're in a good space right now. They're in a good place as far as.
They have concerns and issues, but compared to the peninsula, James Island, and West Ashley, they're in a better space. Absolutely.
So particularly Daniel Island, because it's a planned community, but the caveat that you put on for both Daniel Island and Johns Island is smart planning growth for both of those areas. So what would be the landmines that we would be needing to avoid so as we don't screw it up on Daniel Island or Johns Island? What would you project or recommend that we avoid?
A lot of it's already recommended in the comp plan. It's building on the high ground and not building in the low ground.
Okay.
I think that's probably forefront. Second will be overlaying a 25-year planning horizon and seeing if there are areas that the stormwater department's not currently looking at. So we're still evaluating that, but I would say it's already determined in the comp plan.
And then one more comment and question. So, the inner West Ashley and James Island, I think you identified as the most critical need. I wrote that term down. What do you mean by that?
Those areas are at risk. They're very low lying. They're very populated. So there's not a lot of free space, not a lot of free land. And yeah, that's the biggest concern when you look at overlaying the flood risk. Those areas come to the forefront.
And included in that would be that, and you limited that to just the inner part of West Ashley, not the.
That's a arbitrary definition line, West Ashley in general, but
Okay.
talking about more the area that's already built out. Yes.
Yeah, we use this term inner West Ashley, meaning on this side of 526.
That's kind of our definition as
Yeah.
well, but it certainly extends to Church Creek and Long Branch as well in outer West Ashley.
But that was my follow-up question as well. And that was.
Yeah, that I would, from a need standpoint, that would probably get lumped in with the inner West Ashley side.
Because Long Savannah hasn't been developed yet, and there's a lot of raw land that's on the planning books for development and,
Correct.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Waring and then Parker.
Thank you. Some of the areas West Ashley is low lying, but some of these areas flood on a low tide because the ditches and the pipes just simply aren't large enough. We get these rain bombs, the water can't get out fast enough. Some of the areas are east and we're fixing some in West Oak Forest now. On your plan, is that all lumped in together or is that separated out with sea level rise? In other words, some of the inner areas don't flood because of sea level rise.
Yeah,
But-
the inland areas that flood from a rain bomb aren't mapped necessarily on those maps.
Okay,
And when we talk to the community, I mean, ditches and clean out is probably the #1 issue that keeps rising to the surface. We've had conversations with the Stormwater Department on the massive work they're doing for that. And part of what our plan and our team will recommend is future strategies for investment. How do we expand or how do we recommend prioritizing ditch cleanouts?
and enlarging pipes. See, some of these areas, the ditch is just too small and the pipe is just too small, okay? We know the solutions. It's about getting
Yeah.
money, putting in the solutions. So I just wondered, on those areas, do y'all map out solutions? Or you figure we have the solutions in place and just awaiting funding? Or how's that factor in your report?
Can you say that, repeat that last part again?
Some of the older areas developed in the late 50s and
Mhm.
60s, West Ashley. Don't necessarily flood because of the 9.23 high tide, but during king tides. But they flood because of rain bombs. It's a matter of the water not being able to exit the neighborhoods fast enough. In your plan, are there solutions you're gonna suggest for that? Or that we have the solution in place right now, we just don't have the funding in some cases.
It's more recommendations for future planning. I mean, the solutions I think are known and some of them are costly. So it'll be a combination of solutions and strategies for adaptation in those areas.
Thank you.
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. O'Connell, so I mean, what we're approving tonight is obviously the extension of these services to include now Union Pier. So what will, I mean, obviously, you're just going to give us some kind of guiding points to help us along the Union Pier redevelopment? I mean, what is
Yes,
that scope of work going to look
The
like?
initial work that was done on Union Pier didn't consider, the water plan wasn't a part of that evaluation. They are out ahead of any potential Army Corps projects. So the idea is if they're gonna build, we've got to understand what the recommendation from the water plan team would be for the interior hydrology of the entire peninsula.
Okay.
If they went ahead and they didn't incorporate our team's ideas, then you're missing out on the east side entirely. So we'll be providing recommendations on water management from a compound flooding level to the team doing the work on the planning side.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, because you'd mentioned Church Creek, Lake Dodder, Long Branch. Is the plan still to raise that area between Church Creek and Lake Dodder? And I'm assuming that the pipes are still going under Glen McConnell.
I believe that's so. I might point it to Mr. Fountain over there for the answer to that one, but
Sorry.
sorry to make you get up.
So to some extent, what Mr. O'Connell is showing is that whether or not you connect the two over time, they are somewhat going to become connected, and you're going to have to deal with that expanding floodplain and those expanding issues on many of the properties that do flood. The city is continuing to look with the county at making that connection. The connection that we are proposing is to reduce flooding like Dodder. What Mr. O'Connell's presenting is that if you don't do something to either manage or separate the connection of Church Creek eventually into Lake Dodder, those future connections to Lake Dodder won't make a difference, because the flooding from Church Creek will then expand into Lake Dodder and Long Branch Creek, basically worsening that entire region of the city. So what we're looking at is how do we make short-term improvements? What they're looking at is making sure, and short-term improvement is the wrong word. How do we deal with existing flooding conditions with an eye to future conditions, right? We design for 50 years from now, not for today, but we design projects to relieve current flooding. So like Dodder, for instance. What Mr. O'Connell's group is looking at with Mr. Morris is how do you then incorporate where we are going to see additional flooding and changes in our flood patterns based on those future climate impacts, to say, what additional project work do you need to, one, protect the projects we're building, but two, to protect the new homes that are going to be brought into the way of flooding. So I know that was a really long answer that yes, we are continuing the project to try to reduce flooding on Lake Dodder. The value of the work that Mr. O'Connell is doing with Black and Beach is that we need to also be looking to see, well, what new problems are going to get created 50 years from now? Because as we all know, these projects take so long to plan and build and permit that it's not the situation we want to be in, where, as you've experienced, you've been fighting for the Lake Dodder improvements for years, and we're still working through that process. What we're trying to get to is knowing what's coming and building the project to prevent it from ever having been a problem.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you,
Yes,
Mr. Mayor.
very well said.
Stephen, thank you for this update. I mean, it's really great to see what you're doing, what you're thinking, and sort of what we can expect as you get to the final product, which will never be final, right? I mean, always be worked on. I might have missed it, but did you tell us what criteria you all have used to pick the 6 projects that you're going to take the 10% design?
So they're not finalized yet.
Gotcha.
These are the priorities we'll use. So we're going to develop a matrix to evaluate projects. They'll be screened through this matrix. I would imagine there'll be 10 or 12 that come up to the top. And then from there, we'll try and dovetail those with the 3x3 inland hydrology study, or projects that are more ripe to actually get funding.
Yeah, gotcha. I asked that because you were very quick to respond to, I think it was Mr. Shade, Councilmember Shade, who asked you a question, will Calhoun West be included in that? And you said no. And I suspect I know the reason, but I might ask you about that.
Sure.
Now.
Yeah, the reason is Cowan West is already being evaluated on the stormwater department level.
Okay.
Now, if you're talking about the Charleston Peninsula as a whole, that's different. That's a different study. And to me, a different conversation, but it's because Cowan West is already being studied or hasn't.
Got it. Okay, thanks. Interesting, super interesting.
Councilmember Appel.
All right, since we're all taking turns here, I thought I'd mention a couple things, and this is really more of a comment than putting you on the spot here. But when I see this excellent analysis that sort of highlights the uplands and the places around the city that we want to develop, it's true from a hydrology and water, sea level rise perspective, but I think it's also in conflict with some, modern thinking about urban planning, which is to discourage sprawl, to focus on infill, urban redevelopment, reinvestment. So if you're saying we need to target Johns Island, Cainhoy, Daniel Island, Outer West Ashley for development, go, 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 go. Guys, I had to drop off some stuff at a buddy's house on Johns Island at around 7:45 last week. So I got to experience what it's like to live on Johns Island and try to come into the city of Charleston. It's a nightmare. And there's no plan in place on infrastructure. So as we're thinking about this, we need to be thinking, how do we create job center nodes? How do we create a world in which Johns Island is its own viable city? In a sense, same with West Ashley, same with all these other areas, because the days of all this growth happening, everybody piling into Highway 61, 17, it's just not, it's not viable. But at the same time, downtown is and will continue to be for the foreseeable future, the economic engine of this city in this region. And can we go back to the peninsula side, sort of the I mean, this right here, those dark provision, look, every few decades or so, we're going to get smacked with a big hurricane. It's going to happen. It's been happening for centuries. But what will end the city of Charleston as we know it is if this sea level rise fueled high tide, just constant flooding, the dark blue areas, that's intolerable. That's not sustainable. And that's why we've got to be doing a lot of different things at once. We often talk about how around the Great Depression, there were close to 80,000 people that lived on the peninsula. Now that number's what, 25,000? That's an outrage of urban planning in my perspective. I think there should be 100,000 people that live on the city of the Charleston Peninsula into the future. That's how we're going to solve a lot of issues like affordable housing, so we don't continue to sprawl and do all these other things. We have to be thinking about all these issues together. We can't just be thinking about these issues in a vacuum. They're all interrelated. And if we just decide to max out growth on Johns Island, Outer West Ashley, and Cainhoy without addressing some of these other matters, shoring up downtown for the future, we're going to be creating a very difficult place to live in. But this is excellent analysis. This is stuff I wish we had 30 years ago, but there's no time like the present to get started. So thanks for all the work and look forward to working on some of these projects you mentioned in West Ashley and James Island.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you.
Any other questions? Come back with Councilmember Shade and then let's wrap up.
Thank you. And something that Councilman Rappel said sort of just triggered this in my mind, what you said earlier. Some of the things that y'all looked at in making this presentation, you looked at the existing plans that the city has adopted.
Correct.
So there is an existing plan for Johns Island. Did you take that into consideration? That's the plan for Johns Island?
Yes.
Okay. And Plan West Ashley?
Correct. Yes.
As part of that. So part of these plans that we have adopted by the city are the blueprint on development and smart development. And the issues that Councilman Rappel just brought up as to the urban planning component, because we've had people appear in city council, in which they've said, and this is Councilman Rappel's point, we need more grocery stores, or we need more pharmacies, or we need more doctor's offices, and that kind of, and this is sort of out of your level of expertise, I think. But the point being that incentivizing and bringing into those particular areas so you cut back on the travel time and commute time and the need to move, and that goes back to the referendum on our recreation that we're going to be considering at some point as well, or the voters will anyhow. Those are the sort of things I think that Councilman Rappel is talking about. And so you've got the plans out there to help you do that sort of stuff already. And some of this is not a formal question. I guess I'm sort of preaching a little bit, but that's sort of the issues that we're dealing with is we've got the stuff that we just need to be implementing that's in front of us right now.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Stephen, for your presentation.
Thank you.
We're finding it very thoughtful and helpful, and it's going to be very useful. We look forward to the draft report later this year.
George, thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. And appreciate you taking on the extra chore of helping analyze Union Pier.
that one we're really looking forward to. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So next up is our council communications. First one is a request for an update on the downtown safety improvement plan requested by Council Member Gregory.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And you and I talked briefly about this earlier this week. And I think my specific question was, what happens if we had no cars and it was just pedestrian?
No what?
No cars in the area that's being affected between Calhoun, Liberty, or wherever.
Right.
If that was all pedestrian, what effect would that have on the cars? Because we know for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Right.
Even if we reduced it to one lane, okay, I still want to know what will happen to that traffic. Will there be a bottleneck at Calhoun and King? Where will those cars go? Particularly if we're talking about bike lanes on St. Philip.
Right.
In addition to continuing to talk about two-way oncoming, because I think if we move in that direction, that also is going to have an effect on what we do. So I just wanted to get a sense of where we are with respect to this particular project.
Okay. So to address that question, I believe Mr. Somerville prepared a memo for you, and we're happy to share with council. And it didn't so much answer the question, but to point out all the things that have to be considered. And it's complicated to even answer that question. All the side streets that would need to be rerouted or changed or considered, and so forth. And that was about a 4-page letter of just the things you'd have to think about, you know, to get there, to create King Street as a more pedestrian and complete pedestrian type of thoroughfare. Everything from deliveries to where those other cars are going to go, you know, and Cumming Street being one way, the way it is now, you know, wouldn't allow that flow of traffic going south. So you'd either have to push to Meeting Street, St. Philip, or all the way over to Rutledge Avenue even. So a lot of analysis would need to be done to really fully answer your question. But what we tried to do was provide you a starting point of all the things that you would have to think about to get there.
And Mayor, I appreciate, and I did have some preliminary discussion with our Director of Transportation, and he did point out to me with regard to all these side streets that might be affected, et cetera. But for me, the same thing will happen if we went to one lane. Those answers need to also be given. Because whether we go one lane, no lane, two lane, especially if we went no lanes, no cars, it will have an effect on all those side streets. And also St. Philip, Meeting Street, and it may go all the way to Rutledge, like you say. Right. I would just like to know what effect the change in the traffic will have, not just on the King Street corridor, but all the corridors, be it one lane or two. And I've not really gotten any information in that regard. I have, however, been getting calls from businesses, some of whom have said to me, we'd better leave it alone. Because if we don't, the bottleneck that will be created at Calhoun and King is going to be insurmountable potentially. Again, that's why I'd like to just see some data and information so that we can make an informed decision and we're not flying blindly.
Absolutely. We're trying to communicate to you, council member, that it's complicated. It's not just the side streets. I mean, there's a number of parking lots and parking spaces that are available from King Street right now. One example is behind the Library Society, If you close off King Street, they can't get back to their parking lot anymore. How are they going to get to their parking lot? So there are just many, many things to consider if you were to make that full-fledged conversion like we do on Second Sunday. I mean, you could walk up and down Second Sunday and get a pretty good idea of, you know, the changes that occurred. And for that to be a permanent thing, you know, to the service of those business owners calling you, that would be kind of difficult. But anyway, I respect that. And before we make any serious dramatic change to King Street, I believe those kinds of that kind of analysis, considering those 4 pages worth of items and probably more, you know, would have to be done. So I do want to give council and the public a little update on discussions I've had with SCDOT about trying to move forward with the safety improvements, because as I think all agreed, we'd like to see all those other safety improvements move forward. I mean, that's more than just Lower King Street. There's Meeting Street, Calhoun, St. Philip, crosswalk improvements, timing lights, scramble crosswalks. It's, I think, 5 or 6 different intersections that would add significantly to public safety in the overall central business district. So my communication after our last meeting to DOT is, what would it take for us to, you know, move the ball forward, given the fact that clearly there's some bit of disagreement about how to handle that section of Lower King Street from Calhoun to King. And so I sent a letter to Secretary Hall and been in pretty close contact with Brent Dillon, who was the team leader when DOT personnel was here, but also today spoke with Brent's boss, Andy Leaphart, and they've been in discussion with the secretary about this matter. So I'll try to convey accurately their expression from the secretary, and this is from Andy and Brent. So the SCDOT is interested in including some safety improvements even for this section of King Street below Calhoun. In essence, they are not interested in a do nothing, leave it alone scenario. And to proceed with the entire project, they want to try something on the lower part of King Street. So what they're proposing to us is to to move forward with the project, but to, in a way, carve out that section and call it a pilot project. And they would allow us as a community to take a little time, maybe 6 or 9 months, to engage the public and try to come up with something that most folks are agreeable. I don't know you ever get 100% on this, but to come up with a plan that improves safety in Lower King Street that they could try. And they committed to me that even when they stripe it, say we come up with, this is what we'd like to do. We'd like to extend the sidewalks and, you know, adjust the size of the lane or whatever it is, that they would make those changes initially. I wouldn't say in, you know, washable paint, but in markings that could be removed in 2 to 3 months. If after trying it, we as a community said, this is not working. But they believe to be faithful to safety improvements, that we should come up with some improvements for public safety in that section of King Street, along with the rest of it that we all seem to agree upon. And they're agreeable to go forward with continued community engagement and recommendations from us. And then the promises, if you will, that when they get around to making all these improvements, and even on this section, that we would try it. It would be a pilot project. Be it a widening of the sidewalk or whatever, not that they would physically widen the sidewalk, but they would paint a line to say, okay, y'all want to extend the sidewalk 2 feet? This is where the sidewalk's going to go to, and paint that line. So we'd all see what it is that we're proposing long-term and be able to try it out. So that's in a nutshell, the nature of my conversation with them. They're willing to go ahead and modify our little agreement with whatever wordsmithing is needed to be able to proceed with an arrangement like that.
Just so that I'm clear on what you just said, Mayor, temporary striping or whatever to sort of pilot. In that vein, couldn't we do temporarily striping for a bike lane? Because if I'm hearing you correctly, we're talking about striping for extending the sidewalk and maybe the 1 lane. But if I recall, DOT's first recommendation did include a bike lane.
Their first.
Yes, and so
representation did.
to me, if we're going to pilot, so that we can move on with everything else, perhaps what we should do is pilot the first recommendation that DOT proposed. And if that doesn't work, then we try the extending the sidewalk, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, what I'm saying is that I don't think that DOT would have recommended the bike lane if they didn't think that that was a safe or perhaps even the safer way to go. So I think that if we are going to pilot, let's pilot it with the bike lane and see what happens. If it doesn't work, then we extend the sidewalk instead of extending the sidewalk and going 1 lane and never really getting a sense of what would happen if we had a bike lane. So my recommendation would go with the bike lane first as a pilot.
I hear you. They're granting us the ability to get all these good minds together and just see if we want to tweak it, is all I'm telling you. And I think that's a nice offer, and it's very collaborative on their behalf to be able to listen to us and try to work with us. Because, you know, I get it. That was their proposal, and they certainly feel like that would be safer than current conditions. But, you know, as we had some very good dialogue here a couple of weeks ago and suggestions from citizens about different alternatives, including all pedestrian and everything else under the sun, you know, I think it's good. It would be a good community exercise for us to engage and kind of get everybody around the table, put all that stuff out, see if we come up with something that's even more agreeable to everyone than what their first rendition was. I don't see anything wrong with that.
No, I
The
don't.
timing of their whole process is such that we have time to do that.
And I agree with you, Mayor, but I'm just not clear on what we're agreeing on. I understand the pilot, but what you said initially, okay, did not include a pilot for a bike lane. That we would, that's the impression I got from what you just said.
Yeah.
And all I'm suggesting is that if we are going to pilot, okay, let's pilot with the bike lane first. And then if that doesn't work, move on to the expanding the sidewalk, et cetera, et cetera.
I hear you, and I hope I'm trying to convey what they conveyed it to me. It was all verbal. It wasn't in writing. And so it was a conversation. But
even more
you know,
important,
everything's on the table in essence, and they're willing to let us have a community engagement process where we refine what's been proposed so far. But the bottom line for me is that it helps us, you know, move the whole process forward. And you know, let's work on it and try to come up with something agreeable for the pilot and get all the other stuff done at the same time. I view those other improvements as very important for our safety in the central business.
and I agree with you on that. It's just, I just want to make sure we're clear,
Yes, sir.
okay, on what we're going to pilot first, and I'm still not clear yet.
Councilmember Sack.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Gerg, it sounds to me that anything's on the table, and I agree that the bike lane should be included in that pilot. And it sounds to me that obviously it was a verbal discussion you had, nothing's in writing. But based on your verbal report out, it sounds to me that they're basically saying, let the community decide what goes in that initial pilot. And I would agree with Councilman Gregory that the bike lane should be considered.
It's on the table. It's could well be a part of it. Absolutely.
So
Councilmember.
just very
Sid-
briefly, because Councilmember Sacrin, I think, got in there. I mean, the whole notion, what I understand is that this all will be, I mean, it's not going to be just talk about one thing or another. I think when the mayor used the example of the sidewalk, it wasn't exclusive. It was one of the things that could be talked about. Bike lane included, all those other things. And by the way, during this time, it will allow us to get our ducks in a row on the St. Philip side to not only figure out how to do it, but how to pay for it. Because that's $300,000 or $400,000 out there too. So these 6 or 8 months, we really need to use wisely. We need to get on it quickly. We need to do the one thing we probably haven't done yet, which is put all the people who are interested in this, who are here locally, in a room together and figure it out. And if they can't, then our job is to go and vote one way or the other. But if they can bring us a better idea, a better set of ideas, and all of us are on the same general page, great. If not, then we'll all go to work, do our job and go vote.
If I could just go down the row here, Appel, Bowden,
Okay.
and Shade.
I think to perhaps satisfy Councilman Gregory's concerns about clarity in the process here, can we just all commit that after all the public engagement, getting everybody in a room, we get some options on the table and ultimately it comes to council for a vote on what to try and in what order? Does that sound like a fair way of proceeding?
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
Councilmember Bowden.
I was gonna say something similar, but just add that I'm having a little bit of trouble communicating this issue to people because there's not like a simple photograph of what all the options are. Like there was with Seymour Street, frankly, where I could just send them that and say, these are the options, pick. So if we could just get like the quickest rendering possible to illustrate what has been proposed so far and what may be possible, just, 3 quick options to send out, that would be helpful for me.
All right. Councilmember Shade.
And I'm gonna sound a little bit of a broken record, but what I've said before, Mayor, but if we're going through this pilot or striping, whatever you want to call it, the one thing I've just been hammering home that's critically important with anything we do on King Street is to address these delivery trucks. Because whatever we do with bike lane, striping, extending the sidewalk, if we don't address that, and I think there's already a plan that has recommendations in that, but maybe while we have that plan in place, dealing with parking, dealing with delivery trucks, we start implementing that plan. I think that came out in 2017. So as we're processing this information and we're going through this experimental stage and doing this, at the same time, I'm looking at Robbie, we look at that, dust off that plan and start implementing those things that they recommended dealing with delivery trucks. That is one of the critical problems. We're talking about these bike lanes, we talk about safety issues. That's all integrated into these delivery trucks and how they're not following the rules of the road. We're not, our enforcement is weak on them because they get a parking ticket and they move on. But they have specific recommendations that probably could include some restriping as to these loading and unloading zones as well. So I would just recommend and strongly urge in your discussions with DOT that we look at our T&T department and look at ways to implement what we already know we have available on delivery truck issues.
And I think we can do that without a lot of consultation with DOT. That's within our power now. Thank you. All right. So do I hear like some consensus that we're going to try this? We're going to move forward with DOT and with the agreement. We're going to have this pilot area. We're going to have some community engagement. We're going to really get everybody together in the same room, see if we come up with any better ideas and see if we can move this thing forward. That sound like a plan? All right. All right. So, but it will come back to council before we do the final, thing, but understand they're telling me they'll put it in and it's just a trial basis. We'll try it out, whatever we agree upon. All right. So, we'll get back to you as that develops and, council committee reports are next. First up is committee on.
That's okay.
Right, Mr. Mayor, on item 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Item 2, it should go back to the Community Development Committee to provide clearer guidance to staff in terms of what we really want to see.
Would be happy to do that. That's
Okay.
where it was last, and we'll
Yeah.
we'll put it there again.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson, will you put it on the agenda of the next CD meeting? Thank you. All right, so then next up is our Councilmember Pell.
Just real quick on the Sumar Street issue and the committee piece. Wanted to propose the idea of maybe giving it concurrent jurisdiction with the real estate committee, seeing as though this is real estate that's owned by the city of Charleston. And, you know, based on some of the discussion I've heard over the last several months, there could be multiple directions this goes. I know there's some folks on council that have suggested that there's an interest in perhaps selling the property. Well, that would be something that would be vetted at real estate committee. I'm not talking about divesting jurisdiction from the CD committee. I think there's precedent at the city for matters to be developed and discussed concurrently in multiple committees at the same time. I certainly think a development scheme would be, you know, appropriate for CD. But if there's other options, or if there's other transactions that have to take place involving the city's interest in some of the real estate, I think that would fall under real estate as well. So I would be remiss as a chairman of the real estate committee to not mention that as food for thought.
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
this is,
Gregory.
I would agree, because if we recall, the motion that passed was not just Sumar Street. The motion that passed talked about a comprehensive approach from North Bridge to Sumar Street. And of course, that would involve other standing committees, transportation. So we're in the same place. But I do think that the Community Development Committee needs to flush out some issues so that everybody will know where we're coming from. Because it's far, far beyond just Sumar Street, the motion that was passed by this body. Sumar was just one part of it. And that's why I think we need to really get back as a committee and come forward with any additional information or answers to any inquiries. But it is going to be multiple standing committees based upon the motion we passed.
Councilmember Parker. Can I ask for you to provide what that motion was that passed? Yes, all right. We'll start with the motion that passed. Okay, but at this point, it's going back to CD committee.
Yes.
Gotcha. Speaking of which, it's time for our Community Development Committee report. Councilmember Mitchell.
I'm getting tired now. On August 17th at 3 p.m. I just move for adoption of my committee report.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, next up is our Committee on Recreation. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Recreation Committee met Monday, August 21st. So that was about a little over 3 weeks ago. So some of this may be old news. A lot of updates have probably happened since, but Steve Hamer, who's the Associate Facilities Manager with Charleston County School District, gave us an update on the Johns Island park improvements and renovations. St. John's High School, as some of you know, play both baseball and softball games at Johns Island Park. And he showed us a layout of the renovations that they're doing to the baseball and softball fields. There's going to be new grass, new irrigation, new lighting. They're putting in new batting cages, new dugouts, new bullpens. They're going to add real nice landscaping as you enter the ball field area with brick pavers. It's going to be much improved. It's going to be a beautiful facility by what he showed us. There'll be also some new sod and some irrigation to the multi-purpose field off to one side of the baseball fields there. And one of the good things is that Charleston County Schools is going to be responsible for the maintenance of the fields, just like they are with Stony Field. And the entire project should be complete by the fall of next year. Of course, our recreation programs will have access and we'll be able to use those fields when Johns Island High School, St. John's is not using those. So we'll still have our recreation programs that we've had in the fall out there with adult sports and some youth sports. Those fields will still be available. Mr. Hamer mentioned that stormwater is still requiring some vegetation to be removed around over near the tennis court areas. Part of their plan will be to provide some additional vegetation and maybe some sound barriers. He said some sound reduction panels possibly, which I know Councilman Brady's been concerned with because of the pickleball courts. So, and tennis courts there for people that are living close by. So, so there's some plans in place there. But at the time of his presentation, he was still waiting on some TRC approval where there were some issues with stormwater design, but he's updated that and hopefully we'll get approval. It may already have been approved. I'm not sure, but Laurie Yarborough gave us an update on a great busy summer. All the swimming pools were open and 4 sessions of swim lessons went very well. And because of its heater, WL Stevens will still continue to run through the end of October. It was a very safe and successful summer for aquatics. So the day camps for ages 6 to 12 were all full throughout the city. All specialty and sports camps were completely full. The golf course was serving 30 kids per week at the golf camp, and there were triple that amount on the waiting list for golf kids, matter of fact. The tennis camps were full. The free summer lunch programs went off very, very successfully. Mark Bryan with Hootie and the Blowfish and his program, Carolina Studios, were in our summer camps teaching music as well. Of course, the police department had Camp Hope in our recreation facilities. The summer basketball league went very, very well. And then when we turned to fall registrations, we've had about 6,000 children register for our fall sports citywide. That was 563 downtown. James Island had just under 1,600. Daniel Island had almost 1,100, West Ashley almost 1,400. Another 1,200 girls are playing volleyball on top of that. So we're reaching out to a lot of families with our recreation programs. Jason Kronsberg also spoke about field maintenance. He went through the sports participation increases, particularly on Daniel Island, West Ashley, and James Island. But we've had a total citywide increase in children on youth sports participation of about 44% since 2013. And during that same time period, Parks ground maintenance staffing has not grown and has not kept up with the demand, but has rather actually decreased a little bit in the number of budgeted positions. And even with the budgeted positions, we have a 26% vacancy with the budgeted positions that we have. So Mr. Kronsberg went through our staff is what they're doing for field maintenance and the difficulty of maintaining fields with the limited staff that we have. There's a reorganization plan for our parks department. And as that budget comes up at the end of this year, I hope that you'll pay attention and consider some of the things that Mr. Kronsberg is going to have on that. But we happen to have Mr. Hamer in that meeting, and Mr. Hamer with Charleston County Schools was asked by the mayor to comment on what they're doing, and he's going to speak to Jason about some of the grounds contracts that Charleston County Schools has and see if that may be an answer for us to help keep up with the maintenance of our ball fields. I know Councilmember Saccharin mentioned the use of students with the desire to go into that type of work through some internship programs. That started a good conversation for us as well. The WPAL design process is underway. It's a very low site with a high water table, so we're having to go through the process with engineers. TRC submittal should be very soon. Dock and pier designs are underway, and hopefully it'll go out to bid in Q1 or maybe Q2 of next year. And we spoke briefly about a safe way for citizens to walk or ride their bikes to this site with some sidewalks and some ways to get there along Wapu Road. Fort Pemberton also is going to TRC. The properties under the VAR for demolition of the house, which some of you may know it was burned, and so it's in bad shape. We're also working with the State Historic Preservation Office and the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust, who hold the conservation easement, but hopefully it'll go out to bid also Q1 or Q2 of next year. So the only voting item that we had on our agenda was a WPAL, was for WPAL Park to be named Bill Saunders Park. It was voted on unanimously by our committee, but since that time I had gotten a phone call from Mr. Joe Grant today, matter of fact, who sold the property in 2016. And there was some discussion and maybe a handshake agreement with Mayor Riley at the time on some discussions with the naming of that park. And so I feel like with this new news, at least new for me, that maybe we should delay or defer voting as a council on the naming of the park, because there may have been some discussion or some type of verbal agreement. So
I move for deferral on that item.
And as, other than that, that's it for my report. So,
Right. So, council, we have a second on the
Question.
deferral. All right. On the deferral.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Okay.
I just have a follow-up question.
Can we just go ahead and
Yeah.
take action on that? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any questions on the report overall? Councilmember Shea.
Just a quick question. I see Jason back there. Did we get the benches back at Carl Richardson Park? Good, thank you.
The benches are back at Carl Richardson Park. Yeah. All right. Any other questions for Councilmember Shealy? Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good report. Next up, our committee on
I'm asking a
public.
question, Mr. Mayor. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yes, sir. Councilmember Mitchell.
Councilman Sealy, do we have any, in the recreation part of it, anyone coming from the peninsula, any of the kids coming from the peninsula? So far as recreation, 'cause I don't hear nothing about the kids that used to be there before on the peninsula. You know,
We-
from the east side to west side. I don't hear nothing about the, kids from the peninsula itself.
yeah, I know we had 563 children registered for fall sports downtown, which of course is a lot smaller number than the other areas, West Ashley, Daniel Island and James Island. It's a much smaller number than what they have. There hasn't been, I think, when we look back at the numbers that Lori presented, it was about the same over the last 10 years. It was pretty much no growth. I don't think there was a decline or an increase, about the same number of kids when we were looking at 563 registered.
No, I'm talking just with recreation period, not the same summer camp. I'm talking about in
But-
sports, in sports and other things, that's what I'm mostly talking about. But I see the kids around, but they're running, to me, they're just running wild and they have nothing to do with, on the east side, I'd say. And that's what I was talking more, if they're not getting into, pulling out, these application or whatever to be able to get into the sports. What's going on, because I just see them, that's why we're having problem with some of those kids getting into the, on the Morrison Yard. Because to them, they say they don't have anything to do on the park anymore. This is what they're telling me on Martin Park and Mall Park. They say they don't have nothing to do anymore. So it's a problem, it's a problem that need to be fixed. Because, they called me from the Morris Yard. This is the third time, I believe, the kids done gone and ransacked and tear up the place. The cops, they had the videos and stuff like that, but the kids say they don't have anything to do, so they say they're gonna find something to do. But it's wrong, what I'm saying, but they don't even, on the Martin Park, they just got the the softball, little football team. There's nothing happening. So I'm just wondering, what's the problem?
Councilmember Sackler.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't speak for Lori's department, but I do know, my kid goes to the city of Charleston rec, and it's, widely publicized. I think some of this is on the parents. Parents have to be responsible. I can speak to my personal job with the school district, and I can tell you that Sanders Clyde Elementary School, Mitchell, we offer after school and summer camps, and they're undersubscribed. So, yeah, and Sanders Clyde is free. It's a free after school care, and it's undersubscribed. So part of this is on the parents. They have to take the initiative to get their kids enrolled.
And we do track the numbers and be happy to provide you with a list of programs and numbers of folks kids on the peninsula who are participating. On the east side, Laurie has shared with me before that in addition to Martin Park, there are programs and activities at Julian Devine Center, at the Shaw Center, of course, the MLK swimming pool, and which is a year-round pool. So in fact, there are a number of programs available, but people do have to take advantage of them. There's no question about that. All right, any other questions for Councilmember Shealy? So next up is our Committee on Public Safety, Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a Public Safety Committee meeting yesterday at
All right,
2:00.
any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Councilmember Shade, did you want to add anything?
I do want to add a couple of things, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
We did get an update from the fire department, and I just want to highlight some of the things that Chief Courier gave us yesterday, which was including that our vacancy rate is at this is really important, 0.7%. And when he came in 2018, it was at 21%. So we are retaining, and a lot of that has to do with the amount of money that our increases have for that. He did give us, there's still some very important areas that we need to be addressing. One is the diversity. We're just not getting that level of diversity that we need on the department. And some of us who've been around here long enough remember that it was a much more diverse department back not too long ago. And so it's an uphill battle, but he is trying, and we got some more work to cover on that. And also he gave us an update on the facilities that we need to be looking at, mainly over on Daniel Island, Cane Hoy area, plus some other areas as well. So very quickly, the department's in very good shape, but there are some critical areas that we need to be addressing: facilities and fire marshals. Thank you. I'm looking right at it. Fire marshals need to be included in the fire pay plan. One recommendation, I think, we'll be coming forward with that as well. We also got a report from the municipal court from our one and only Judge Susan Herdina. Our numbers are increasingly getting better, even with the number of cases coming in. They have been reducing their caseload since last year. I'm trying to pull that number up, at 3,000 cases pending right now. So even though we've gotten 12,000 or so cases have come in over the fiscal year, we're still managing those cases very well. So a lot of good work done by both our municipal court system and our fire department. And finally, I just want to clarify a couple of things. We did go into executive session regarding the police department internal audit. And the purpose of going into executive session was to discuss some issues I had concerning the contract and not anything regarding a report. That report is scheduled to be released on time in late October. But otherwise, our discussions were dealing with some internal issues, dealing with the contractor and the subcontractor alone, and nothing along the lines dealing with any preliminary report or interim reports of that nature. So hopefully we'll have all that squared away and give us an internal report update sometime in October.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from anyone? Councilmember Sackman?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just be brief. I want to commend Chief Courier and the fire department. There was a story in Channel 5 about their efforts around diversity, and I just want to be clear, because just folks in the community, when they read that, I think they thought they were hiring based on race, and that's not the case. I think what it is more about expanding how we're recruiting, a la our efforts at St. John's High School, which is great. So it's really our efforts to expand our recruiting avenues, not necessarily hiring based on race. So I just wanted to make sure that the three people that are listening to tonight's meeting out there, that's what it's about.
The diversity includes a wide variety of folks who we want to be into the fire department, and those numbers are just not there. And he recognizes it, and it needs to be addressed.
All right, thank you very much. So next up is our Committee on Public Works, Councilmember Waring.
I move the adoption of the report.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
One thing I need to say, though, I just want to thank, I just want to thank, again, the mayor's giving credit, but I think it's so monumental. We need to give second thanks on closing out the phase 5 on Spring Fishburne Drainage Project. 4 on Spring Fishburne Drainage Project. I mean, Mr. Fountain and his team and all involved, Mayor, excellent. Has to be said a second time.
And a special shout out to Steve Kirk.
That's right.
He's our engineer, that's
engineer.
been on that project from day one. I think 17 years he's been working.
He
on
lives it. You're right. Thank you for that.
You're not going to scare the public with the beaver update?
I'm gonna leave that up to Councilman Shealy, man. That was,
And Mr. Mayor, that included the first reading for the change to the perimeter protection.
thank you, Madam Clerk. And I wanted to thank the mayor and council for expanding the committee for representation for the outer areas of the city. Thank you again.
Absolutely. For the record, that's included. Yes. Councilmember Bowden.
Well, I was gonna add that if you ever want to know anything about the intersection of beavers and stormwater management, that's a fantastic YouTube video to watch. But I did also want to point out, and I thought this was so important to point out to my constituents, because last year I went to them and I said, you know, I think we have these staffing issues and I think we need to raise millage rates in order to deal with that problem. And we just had that awesome report about the fire department being 100% staffed. Drivers in the sanitation area are at virtually full staffing, which, I mean, if we remember the conversations we were having last year, it was this type of skilled labor that we were missing. And I just thought that was such an awesome thing, and just shows how wise or how wisely those resources were used when we went to our citizens and asked for them.
Well said. Thank you for that. Councilmember Shealy, do you want to add anything on beaver management?
I do appreciate the efforts to remove the beavers out of Church Creek. So thank you.
All right. So next up, our audit committee, Councilmember Seekings.
I think let's all grab our auditor's discussion analysis and go through it page by page.
Did we carry the motion? Yes. We did. Thank you.
We did. Yes.
Kenny, we had an excellent audit committee meeting, clean audit. Again, kudos to Amy and Matt and their staff. It's incredible how much work it takes to run a city, to make sure it's run efficiently, and more importantly, to make sure it's run properly. And when we get an audit like this, after all that work to show us how well they're doing, it's really incredible, impressive. The budget that we deal with today is double what it was when I first got elected. The number of projects they deal with every day are through the roof, more than we ever thought about, the issues that come up. So it's a big, big job. And today, when we received this report, it's complete satisfaction for them that they're doing exactly what they should be doing to keep the city running on all fours. And it's satisfying to see it. So move for adoption of the report and move that we all, by acclamation, thank our team for putting us in the position we're in. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. God bless. Next up is our Committee on Ways and Means, Councilmember Gregory. We got a motion on the floor. Any discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Jennifer, you have mine.
Next up, we have our,
From Ways and Means.
oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember
Yes,
Parker.
there is one nay vote that will carry over for Councilmember Parker.
Okay. Okay, on bills up for second reading, we did get a request to defer number 5. Can I entertain a motion to defer number 5 by the applicant?
So move.
Okay, all right. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That leaves us 1 through 4 and 6 through 10.
Move for.
All right. Any discussion on any of those? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading, the ratification of 1 through 4 and 6 through 10. Hearing no objection, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor, we have Mr. Mayor, we're supposed to go back to the Ways and Means.
Oh,
Number
so now back.
12. Public hearing number 12.
Hey, y'all, public hearing number 12, we got to go back there. And now that the annexation is approved, can I entertain a motion for second reading of number 12 under public hearings? Any discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading
For
and
approval.
ratification. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. My understanding is there are no bills for first reading. Once again, y'all, to be technical about it, I gotta sign these here ordinances. So would anyone like to have the floor for just a minute for any kind of announcement?
So no beavers are being killed. That's, I just don't want to scare anybody in the audience that may have been.
Council members, chairman of the Beaver Dam Project.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to sign it more like Joe would. I'm trying to sign it more speedily. Is there any more business to come before this council tonight?
Move for
Hearing none,
adjournment.
we